Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Sinta Budiyanti. My number is 09190123411. I'm from the Department of English Education in third semester, exactly in morning class. In here, I like to presentation with my friends, group 5, for our assignment. The material is about ethics and the role of interpreters. The first, let me introduce my friends. The first is Sinta Budiyanti, or me, as a speaker 1, Afifah Anggie R as a speaker 2, Aqila Nisfa M as a speaker 3, Jihaan Aqiila as a speaker 4, Yunita Devika D as a speaker 5, Puspita M as a speaker 6, and the last is Azalia Shafa O as a speaker 7. Okay, let's start it. Issue of ethics have always attained interpreting. Thus, in those doing the interpreting is paramount for participants who lack command of the other language. And recognizing of ethical practice is fundamental to recognizing as a profession. Moreover, unlike other professions where there is a direct relationship between a practitioner and a client, interpreters always work between two parties, either a speaker and a listener. In this chapter, we learn about how ethical consideration and resulting codes of ethics have arisen in diverse interpreting settings. Setting the scenes. In this field, if professional interpreting is a community settings, is arisen from three significant post-war historical developments. The first, the increasing movement of multilingual population around the globe through migration and the whole society's responses to this. The second is the growth in assertiveness of and service provision for deaf communities. And the third is slowly evolving changes in the attitudes towards and the responses to the presence of indigenous populations. Ethical challenge in this field will need to be made in an often difficult circumstance. The increasing multilingualism, having an ethical or professional awareness, or cultural having very different understanding of ethics. Okay, that's all, and then we will continuing by Afifah.
I'm Afifah Anggie R, and then I will explain about from code of honor to detailed codes of practice. Several authors have surveyed codes of ethics in interpreting. Schweder-Nicholson looked at 9 codes to show their common emphasis. Schweder-Nicholson identified 7 common principles in the most North American codes she surveyed. First, the interpreter's overall role, and then second, competence and required skill, and then impartiality, completeness and accuracy, and then conflict or interest and grounds for disqualification, confidentiality, and last, continuing professional development. At the other end of the spectrum is the code of the International Association of Conference Interpreters, or AIIC. Conference interpreting was for an international elite with presumed equality among participants. It could be adversarial or diplomatic disagreement. War crimes trials, there be demanding strict impartiality. Interpreter shared the social background of the participants, and AIIC demanded optimal working condition and controlled entry to the profession. There is no mention of impartiality of accuracy of role from this code. It would be impossible to say what a conference interpreter does or does not do. Nothing relates to the actual practice of interpreting. There follow several paragraphs on the equality of equipment and resources that interpreters must have, and the requirement that working with non-members of AIIC can only be tolerated if they undertake to work under the same conditions as AIIZ members, and that standards of remuneration must not be undercut. Moreover, AIIZ's rigorous demands for novice to interpret for stipulated hours under supervision by existing members makes it possible to avoid any mention of role or detailed practice or other ethical principles because of the assumed common professional socialization of its members. Such clear social and institutional difference among participants may themselves lead to ethical issues. Quite apart from any language difference, all professions working in such area have codes of ethics to guide contact. That's all.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aqila Nisfa M. Set specific codes, differences, and perception of role. An interpreter has a code of ethics, especially in the sector. For example, the National Council on Interpreter in Healthcare has a one-page code of rule much along the line. NCIHC and CIEA set out 4 roles for interpreter. First, message converter to message clarifier to culture clarifier for patient advocate. So an interpreter must say with certainty and be careful, because often an interpreter encounters problem with patient and institution who do not understand English language. Thank you.
Okay, next is generic codes. The National Register of Public Service Interpreters, or NRPCI, code in the UK appears to identify 2 different roles for interpreters. Number 1, practitioner carrying out work as public service interpreter or in other contexts where the requirement for neutrality between parties is absolute. Number 2, practitioner shall interpret truly and faithfully what is uttered without adding, omitting, or changing anything in exceptional circumstances, as summary may be given if requested. The Irish General Code makes a specific reference to interpreting in a legal situation and more explicitly than the NRPCI Code. Differentiates legal interpreting from other contexts is number 1, where an interpreter or translator is working in any matter relating to the law. Number 2, the association does not and will not support translation or interpreting work done in the Republic of Ireland into or out of any other language on behalf of a citizen of Republic or other nationality.
My name is Yunita Devika D, and I will to continue the presentation. It is about ethics outside of codes, conflict situations, and business interpreting. Involvement of conference interpreters in situations of conflict and the use of local interpreters during foreign military interventions has given a particularly sharp edge to ethical issues. And for the theory of interpreting, there are 2 theories. First, from Thomas, the main ethical issue is not for interpreters, but for those who require them. And also, Thomas points to case of professional locally recruited of interpreters being killed or needing to flee as a result of their activity. And the second theory came from Hillary. Like Thomas, she notes the contingent nature of interpreters' position when they are not offered protection when they relinquish their roles, and The hook discrepancies in pay, conditions, and protections for the military interpreters that come with the occupying force, compared with local interpreters in Hillary also concerned with theoretical issues of supposed neutrality of interpreters, a wider theoretical issue that will be dealt with below. And the interpreting also have two characteristics. Such interpreting is characteristic by two features. Number one, it is situation of interactions. This is a dialogic rather than monologic situations. And number two, it is a personal encounter. This characteristic usually face to face, but it can also be mediated, for example, by telephone or video or something else.
About interpreting ethics theory and translation ethics. Clifford Ricketts' description in the literature of interpreter as needing to be invisible, neutral, direct linguistic translators. Other description talk of the univolve or mechanical. Chesterman believed hitherto approach to ethics in translation have been limited and contradictory. He identifies for such approach ethics of representation, which is tracked back to ancient notion of fidelity of text and adequately representing the author's intentions. Ethics of service, based on commercial principles. Here, the translator is ethical if they understand the purpose or scopus of the translation and carry out the commissioner's instructions and timelines. Ethics of communication. Here, the emphasis is not on representing the other but on communication with others to further intercultural cooperation between parties who are other to each other. Thus, the ethical translator is a mediator working to achieve cross-cultural understanding. Chesterman 2001 141 norm-based ethics. This arises from descriptive translation studies theory 19 and 95 and explains norms in terms of expectations. The ethical translation is that which conforms to these norms. This is term filters in translation and translator. They analyze the men in four categories: environmental, interpersonal, paralinguistic, or intrapersonal, and show how controls can be exercised by the interpreter in each situation.
The conclusion is, as can readily be seen, the field of interpreting showed some significant debate overall, though this should not be taken to mean that there is not a common ethical understanding of the interpreter words. While there is robust theoretical debate over conduit or neutrality, the number of items in code in which there is divergence overall is very small has been identified. Advocacy are not in healthy setting. Degree of cultural explanation some different between legal and non-legal setting. The overwhelming degree of common understanding of ethics may also difficult to identify because of substantial detail that is included in many codes. in field may still very far from being able to adopt codes that stress only excellence and discretion. Code of ethics remain in some cases that the only document about role some interpreter will have. Thus they play vital education role, and such codes are crucial in underpinning loyalty and duty the profession on the part of practitioners, many of whom may not have extensive professional socialization. Yet argumentation permission over whether present code enforce medical or rule-bound ethic on interpreter. The many arguments suffered in the last section above take us forward in consider the nature and purpose of interaction between interpreter and interlocutor, where we have the building of expertise by interpreter matched by the building of teamwork with other participants. This building of teamwork is sometimes that few code yet it seems have been able to accommodate, or perhaps even at time and indicates serious work for the future. Finally, code of ethics can only go so far in establish actual ethical behavior among interpreter and understanding of interpreter role by other participants. Attention to education selection, regulation where appropriate, and raising of professional consciousness and solidarity constitute the long march that is and must be undertaken in all countries where interpreting flourishes. The other contribution in the volume show how far interpreting has come in that much. Thank you. That's our presentation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.